All right, everyone listening, sure appreciate you tuning in. Repeat listeners, new listeners, always feel a lot of gratitude towards each one of you that are willing to share in this space with us. And again, as we have mentioned before, this is just us, now 3 authentic men having a conversation, being ourselves, creating space for us to be the best version of ourselves. I'm Ron Servin. Checking in right now, just feeling a lot of gratitude for our amazing special guest that's sitting below me right now. Not physically, on the screen. His name is Scott Leeper. I'm going to introduce him after Cedric says his hellos, but just want to check in with you, the audience, and just a lot of,
there he is.
A lot of appreciation for just what you bring to us and the continued journey that we have moving forward. So, Cedric, how are you doing today, buddy?
Man, if I was in a bed, I swear to God, I'd be twins, man. It's a good day in the neighborhood, bro. Real good day. Hey, what's up, y'all listeners? Man, hey, the returning listeners, new listeners, hey, we appreciate y'all. Welcome to the Man Kave Experience. Man, we got a good one in store for y'all today. Golly.
So if you haven't heard us mention his name is Scott Leeper. He is, for me, I've been in his presence, and that was just an awesome experience. And he's a health coach. I think soon to be life coach as well, kind of looking at growing himself. He's also a personal trainer, and I'll not dive in too deep for him to explain a little bit about himself. But Scott kind of stepped up and offered his willingness to step into the cave and to experience what we put out there. And we're so honored to have you here, Scott. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what brings you into this space called the Man Cave.
Hey guys, I'm Scott. So what brought me to Man Cave? Well, wonderful guys like yourself. One, I appreciate the invite. And so a little bit about myself. I started health coaching just recently. But the bigger story is what got me involved. And without diving too deep into the full story, it started in 2012 when I took my dad off life support, and alcohol was a big part of that. And from there, I went through a downward spiral myself. My son was born 3 months later. My wife and I separated within my son's first year of life. His first birthday was one of the most awkward birthday parties I've ever been to, and it happened to be my kid. Shortly after that, my wife moved back up here to Indiana. I was still stationed in North Carolina. Fast forward a little bit further, and I get kicked out of the military. They got me for adultery, essentially. When my wife and I were separated, I was talking to somebody else. Marine Corps' eyes, they viewed that as adultery. You're still married. And so I got kicked out. I got an other than honorable discharge. At the time, I was a criminal investigator. And when you get kicked out with an other than honorable discharge, no federal agency and no police department wants to hire you. So what the hell am I going to do? I went through a couple different industries. The first one was staffing. I knew I wanted to impact somebody's life. And so, okay, well, what better way than to help people find jobs? Found out very quickly that job sucked the life out of me. And then shortly after that, I found a job with the Salvation Army. I was running a bunch of retail shops, but the beautiful thing was the retail shops, they funded a adult rehab facility here in South Bend, Indiana. And so I had the pleasure of doing some motivational speeches for the guys in a rehab facility at that particular time. And I had guys that were so closed off come up to me and tell me that I reached them on a level nobody's ever reached them on. Mm-hmm. That was the most fulfilling thing that I've ever had said to me. Once they actually closed that rehab facility, sent everything to Gary, Indiana, so all I got stuck with was the retail side of things. And I don't give a damn about retail. And so shortly after that, I found another job. I found bodybuilding when I started that job. That job also sucked the life out of me, so I became a personal trainer. And while I was a personal trainer, the one thing I learned was I could teach people to pick things up and put them down all day long. The problem is when life throws a challenge at them, if they haven't made the mindset shift, they're going to fall out immediately. They won't come back to the gym because life took over. and they're no longer showing up for themselves. They're no longer being the best version of themselves that they could possibly be because they're too busy dealing with other things rather than focusing on their personal health. So that's, in a nutshell, that's essentially what got me into health coaching.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, that's as all of us, kind of share our stories as we move forward in our lives. I mean, there's the Cliff Note version, and then there's the expanded version. And many of us live our life not willing to share that expanded version. So I think for us, as Cedric and I have, and Scott, I really appreciate you stepping up and not just playing that small game of giving the nice, the nice nuggets that people want to hear versus some of those difficult areas around, alcoholism, around, experiences in the military that weren't in fact true. They were just, that's the way it was. And that's how it turned out. So I really appreciate your genuineness, your honesty. And, we spoke briefly before we came on the air about, an interesting topic that you kind of alluded to around stress and around self-confidence. And, we all know that stress, plays out different ways in our life, whether it's our own stress or how we experience others, stress. Cedric recently has gone through some challenges with, stress of moving, stress of a new baby, stress of uncertainty in his life. Scott, you're in a brand new career, kind of living a life where you're, at this point for me, you're just creating a foundation for amazing things in people's lives as I experience you every time. And for me, kind of stepping out of a career that I've been at for 34 years and stepping into a new, found love and passion that I'm excited about. But what goes along with that is, some of that stress, some of that uncertainty, some of how we experience others. So I'd like to kind of hear from both of you guys on, kind of how stress affects you. And when you're dealing with stress in other people's lives, how does that affect, kind of how you maneuver and allow them to, gain that confidence that stress has so many negative impacts, yet it's still a natural occurrence that our body responds to that fight flight mentality. I'd be interested to kind of see how you guys feel about that.
Yeah. So the big thing is, your physiology when you're stressed out, your body, the one thing that we've learned as a health coach is your body can't differentiate the difference between, being chased by a bear or having a bad day at work or trying to work on starting a new health coaching business. There's no differentiation to your body on what the stress is actually coming from. And your mind, what it is, but your body physiologically does not know. Therefore, your body creates, your sympathetic nervous system kicks in, or the fight or flight response kicks in, and therefore pulls blood flow from your digestive system into your extremities to help you get away from whatever stress is occurring. Now, you don't need to run away from a bad day at work, although sometimes we want to, but that's not necessary. Obviously, if you're running if there's a bear chasing you, you better tie up your shoelaces because you got to run fast. But the point is, the sympathetic nervous system kicks in, pulls blood flow from your digestive system into your extremities to get away from the stress. So the one thing that I work with people on very closely, just to add value, whether they're my client or not, is the 5-5-7 breathing. To inhale for 5 seconds, hold it for 5 seconds, exhale for 7 seconds. That's resonated a lot with me because what happens physiologically is the blood, when you start to breathe that way, your brain starts to say that, maybe I'm not as stressed as I thought I was. Therefore, brings the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, brings blood flow back to your digestive system. Now, the one thing, when I'm talking with people about stress and about the digestive system, I ask them, when you get stressed out, you get bubble guts? Do you get diarrhea? Do you have all these issues? You feel you need to go to the bathroom, whatever? Almost every time the light bulb goes off and I'm like, oh my God, I do.
Right.
And that's specifically because your sympathetic nervous system kicked in, and now your bubble guts are kicked up because your body really doesn't give a shit. No pun intended. Doesn't give a shit, about your digestive system at that time because there's a stress that your body has to get away from, point blank, right? So by breathing that way, it physiologically calms you down. And then after you physiologically calm down, now you need to start having that inner dialogue with yourself with worry about what you can control. Don't worry about what you can't control.
Right. And Scott, I'm going to challenge you a little bit here. Obviously, your insights are amazing. I think we all concur with what you're saying. I guess my question to you before I turn it over to Cedric is, there was a point in your life where stress for you was managed much differently. So I'm interested to kind of hear from you how you dealt with your stress before you've had this amazing, kind of breakthrough and understanding of how stress can really affect your everyday life.
2 words. I didn't. The thing is, when I was going through all those issues, beer was a good friend of mine. Negativity was my best friend. And the thing is, we're only hurting ourselves. And we're also hurting the people around us when we're trying to get everybody to feel pity on us. And that's exactly what I did. I had this victim mentality. I had this mentality that everybody should get on my side, but nobody's on my side because it's just me against the world, and everybody's against me, and everybody's out to get me.
Right.
And in the case of my dad's death, when I took him off life support, then that experience was a curse, was a burden for me. And when we listen to Sean Stevenson talk at HCI Live, that when he talked about how his mom had asked him, is this going to be a burden or a gift? That has stuck with me. And I can't tell you how many people I've asked that question to now. Right. Because, I've had to turn, my dad's death from my burden into my gift. I've had to turn the fact that I was booted from, the military with an other than honorable from a burden to a gift. And now, with the potential of working with some of our local law enforcement officials, as in the capacity of health coaching, after being kicked out as a CID agent, everything's kind of come full circle, because now I can look at these guys and see myself as that negative Nancy working in law enforcement and try to help them understand that the path of negativity is not going to get them anywhere. But if they could just switch their mindset, understand that, life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you, and that what you go through, you grow through, then they will have a much more impactful, much more fulfilling career as a police officer.
I can see Cedric in the background kind of jotting down those phrases, because he's going to make T-shirts out of those here shortly.
All right. What you go through, you go, yeah.
I know I can't keep Ced at bay for very long, so I know he's got lots to share. So Ced, either comments for Scott or some of your own experience. I do want to give Scott maybe a little bit more time later on to share what he's doing with the police department. I'd really like to hear about that as well.
Man, to answer your question, like looking back, man, I was almost like Scott, and it's kind of crazy, man. We have similar stories. Both Marines Simplified Dog. Got an OTH other than honorable myself. And really I got I got kicked out because of stress. The stress of being away from home, traveling a whole lot. And part of that, and I got a lot of big head. But how I dealt with it, one was a little bit of alcohol, but I had this uncanny way of just bottling everything up. It just stayed all on the inside, and I would forget it, or at least try and forget about it. Out of sight, out of mind, but it stayed in my head. And if it did, nobody knew. I just didn't tell anybody. And as long as the world didn't know, then to me, it was like I didn't even have a problem. And I think, after all the medical tests and all the poking and prodding, I still contribute my aneurysm to stress. I just stressed my heart out, from from the time I got kicked out of the military and trying to figure out what the hell am I going to do with my life now? Like, oh shit, I got kicked out of the Marine Corps, the best of the best. Nobody's going to F with me.
Yep.
Like, what am I going to do? And then finally I get a sales job and all that craziness and trying to reach it's numbers. You got to make the numbers. You got to make the numbers. You got to make the numbers every day, sometimes 80 hours, 90 hours a week. That just broke my heart. I mean, it couldn't take it. So I really didn't deal with the stress. And it was that male ego is kind of what kept it at bay. Oh, you're a man. Nobody needs to know your problems. And you can't tell anybody your problems because you're weak. And then that Marine mentality I'm sure Scott can attest to it. It's a beautiful, dangerous thing all in one because it can get you through some tough times, but there's a lot of that fucked up male ego behind it. You're a Marine. Like, no way you better present yourself as weak to the world. No way. And that's kind of how I dealt with it back then. And now, being a health coach, I use the 5-5-7. And believe it or not, just talking and being in tune, like understanding, hey, I was born with emotions for a reason. And I have to experience those emotions. Funny thing, because one of the main reasons I joined the Marine Corps is because I saw a lady and her grandfather had died. And it just struck me as weird that she wasn't crying. I was like, why, Michelle, why aren't you crying? And she was like, well, Marines don't cry. And I was like, holy shit, I want that. And so that was like kind of why I joined. But I realize now, you have tear ducts for a reason. It's okay to cry, even as a man. But for whatever reason, we've been programmed to think men shouldn't cry. Men shouldn't be emotional. And now I'm starting to learn, hey, it's actually pretty cool. And a lot of people admire a man that can be vulnerable, be transparent, and be in tune, like, quote unquote, with his feminine side. I hate that. But just being in touch, I call it, man, just being in touch with your emotions, understanding who the hell you are. So that's how I deal with it now. And I feel so much better. And it's hard for me to even tell Kanisha about some stuff sometimes because that ego kicks in. But after it's all said and done, I feel better. And I'm like, holy shit, the communication line is open. It's just so much better. Mm-hmm. Stress less.
Yeah, and we oftentimes think that, short spurts of major stress is the only thing that can be impactful in our life. So for me, when I look back at my life, mine has been more of a lower level stress for, periods of time. And we think that that's just normal, right? We're just kind of operating at a lesser version and not really needing to engage versus some of those internal, energies that we find causing neck aches or back aches or areas we're carrying this energy in our body. And we don't think about that's originated from just that lack of, letting go. And for me, I found meditation 7 years ago and really found a place to where I can let those thoughts of lesser than, not good enough, all these thoughts that were, put upon me as a child from my father, that I decided that those are just thoughts. They're not something I need to believe in. They're not something I need to allow, define who I am as a man. And stress is something obviously that we have, as we do with everything else in our life. It's a choice. So I think when we, kind of play the victim card and just put a blanket statement out there that life is so stressful, you're allowing that to be predominant in your life. And there's ways that you can overcome that. Scott is an amazing, athlete and bodybuilder and doing these things that allow some of that stress release, meditation, mindfulness, creativeness, try to tap into, that creative side of yourself. It takes those negative thoughts away from the present moment. And you actually realize there's more than this little box that you've, allowed to dictate your life. Open up that box and realize there's so much more to experience. And again, just that, for me, it's just understanding it's not just these huge catastrophic events. I've had some events in my life that have led to some struggles and some stress, but for me, it's probably been more of the subtle, low grade stress that can be equally as damaging, because you're still impacting the body. The body is, it's not in a homeostasis, point where everything's functioning the way it's supposed to. The messages we're putting out there, all of our cells are listening to those messages that we're, listening to and hearing, and the body responds to that. So every negative thought or expression we put out there as a result of our stress ends up telling, every cell in our body, hey, this is what we're doing right now. We're not focusing on being all this working, group together to give this person that I'm living in, the optimum life. We gotta listen to his messaging. He's the master of how we're conducting our business, which is pretty crazy when you think about disease and how stress leads to so many of these ailments and illnesses that we used to think was as a result just of environmental and other things outside of us, versus most of it's within.
Scott, I'm kind of interested, man, because you're dealing in the law enforcement field, and I'm sure it's a pretty high stress job, but because I was thinking about a conversation I was having or I overheard on a Facebook Live. So have you come across the person that says, well, man, you don't understand. Oh, you don't understand my job, or you don't understand how I have to deal with this person. It's so stressful. Have you come across that? And if you have, like, what kind of words or advice would you have for those types of people?
Well, so I'm just breaking just chipping the tip of the iceberg right now. So I haven't dealt with too many law enforcement just yet. But, the thing is, some of the clients I've had are middle-aged women. And if there's anybody I'm not going to understand right now, middle-aged women, right? So, and the thing is, what I would say to that is listen, I don't need to understand. I don't have to understand. The thing is, my job is not to understand specifically what it is that you're dealing with and fix your problem. My job is to help you go deep into your own mind for you to be able to find the solutions. And then I support you in those solutions, and I hold you accountable when you're not living to the highest version of yourself.
Right.
I don't have to understand. People don't have to understand my story. You know what I mean? But the thing is, it kind of goes along with, what you were saying about getting the aneurysm. I'm big on analogies, and if I don't understand the job, I understand the stress. Now, the thing is, I was a criminal investigator, so I do understand the job. Maybe not on a city level so much, but I do understand, some of the concepts and some of the stresses. But the thing is, when we're dealing with these stresses and we're not dealing with them properly, we're suppressing them. We're not talking about it. We're not getting it out. The thing is, it's just like taking that 2 liter of Coke, shaking it up real bad, popping that top and watching it explode, right? We're the same damn way. When we've got these stresses and these things that are going on inside of us, and they're dragging us down, but we don't get it out, that starts to build that pressure. And you're a perfect example for this analogy. You had an aneurysm. Your top blew, right? Because you weren't dealing with the stress properly. And for me, my top blew by way of making bad decisions, putting myself in compromising positions. But what I've learned now, and another point I wanted to go off with what you were talking about, Cedric, was you talk about being vulnerable with your wife and talking through some of the things with your wife. The thing is, that's the difference between communicating and connecting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When we come home from work and we sit down on the couch, we pop open a beer, we turn the TV on and watch more negative shit called the news, And and the wife sits and the wife sits down next to us and, hey, how's your day? Yeah, it was fine. Yeah, it was good. Well, what happened? Oh, you know, bullshit. Well, what'd you do? Well, Joe's a dickhead. Okay. What's going on right there is two computers passing data back and forth. It's communicating. But what's going on? Okay, this is what's going on. These are the things that I'm dealing with. This is what I'm feeling right now. And you know, even us as men, actually opening up. I'm having a problem with this, and I don't know how to fix it. That is connection.
Mm-hmm.
Let me rephrase that. It's connection, obviously, as long as the communication is back and forth on a deep level, right?
Right.
So, but you know, and one other point I wanted to make. I'm big on stories. I'm big on analogies. I don't know if you guys have heard the story of the lobster.
I don't think so.
How a lobster grows. So you've heard this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay, we'll recap it anyway. So when lobsters are mushy animals inside a shell, and obviously the massive lobsters we see, that's not how they were hatched or born, or hell, I don't know. I'm not a marine biologist, so I don't know how they come to be. But anyway, when they grow, their bodies start to push up against the shell that they're in, creating them to be uncomfortable. So that is their signal. It's time to grow. So they got to go under a rock formation, shed their shell, grow a new one, come back out, live life. Sometime thereafter, their mushy bodies start to push against that shell again. Signal again, time for growth. Back under the rock, shed the shell, grow a new one, come back out. Us as people were the same way, but it comes in the form of uncomfortable life experiences, failures, negative situations, trials, tribulations. That's where it comes from. We obviously don't have a shell, but we have to have some sort of signal that it's time for growth. And it's the negative situations that are our signal for time for growth.
Yeah. And I share with a statement that I used often that I actually look to see about copywriting and I have it on my website, know to grow and grow to know. And we have to know as individuals our willingness to, know to learn by, exploring, learning, teaching, all these things that allow us to continue to move forward in our life. And I think, Scott, you touched upon, playing small, coming home and at times I can, be honest with myself and say I played small in connecting with my wife. And I think it's so important, as you mentioned, to not just exist in a relationship and to actually live life to its fullest, not just in the little areas of your life that feel comfortable, but being vulnerable, all these things that we're not taught to be as men, to really share, those tough experiences. And that ties into stress and all these other, kind of conversations we're having around the big picture of how do we, as men especially, really kind of push the envelope to be not that typical, stereotypical, expectation that maybe our father put upon us or society puts upon us. Cedric and I have had plenty of times where we've cried and shared, vulnerable moments. And I think that's something that allows you to reduce stress, to really let go of stress, to understand, those things in our life that are much more important than those, those little points that pull at you and just make you not be able to really tap into, all of you. And I've grown a lot. I know I've got a lot more work to do. And so I think for me, kind of in closing, I just think this all kind of ties together. Many of the topics we've talked about in the past, I appreciate you, Scott, kind of bringing up stress, because I've got something we really haven't dove into and really understand how that impacts not only us, but how we experience that in others. And I applaud you for your willingness to, deal with a profession that has extreme stress. You're going in working with individuals that we can't even imagine the scenarios they may not even know that they're going to enter in the next day. And I applaud you for your willingness to, just by example, just help make them realize that there's options and how the impacts that they're allowing to have happen because of the stress, is only in their best interest to really dig deep and find out other ways of releasing that. So I truly appreciate you, Scott, we're going to have you back on again. This isn't just a goodbye for forever. This is definitely something that we would love to have you back, and maybe even doing a free form of not having a specific topic and just going off on whatever's resonating with us for that day. And Cedric, for you, I always appreciate kind of what you bring to the table, and just your willingness to show your heart. I know we had a conversation a couple weeks back about how we experience our heart, but I feel your heart. So whether or not you're always feeling your heart in a different way than I'm feeling it, that resonates with me. And truly appreciate the listeners. Just every time you step in and listen to what we have to say, we appreciate just that time you're creating for yourself and whatever impacts it may have on your life.
Yeah. Man, I'm in awe. Like I was so looking forward to it. I'm like, what, we having Scott? Like, hell yeah, man. Because I remember hearing you speak at ACI Live and that energy. And plus, I mean, it's always nice to be in the company with a fellow Marine. You know the feeling.
Yeah.
And man, yeah, and it's such a great topic. And I definitely see us coming back, because this could be one we can have a whole series on this, because a lot of stuff ties into it. And I'm so grateful that you brought that, and appreciate that. Appreciate you. Listeners, I really appreciate you guys just taking time out for self-care, like we talked about, I think it was last week or whatever, but just taking time out to see what it is men are talking about, because we do cover subjects that are sometimes, I know for me, hard to talk about, but we talk about them for you guys, to let you know that men can cover some aspects of emotions and different thoughts. And so I'm so grateful for you guys and love you guys. Scott?
So I do want to leave a final note going off of Ron's, what Ron was talking about a minute ago about, what our dads taught us. And the thing is, whenever we talk about, what our dads taught us, and we got to be a certain way, the thing is, I always refer to, we used to smoke inside our houses, while breastfeeding a kid, you know what I mean? Like, and so, but as time moves on, we learn what's good, what's bad. And so I think vulnerability for men is the same way. Like, we're getting to the point now, just like smoking's bad. Well, keeping everything bottled inside is bad too. So, that's always the analogy. That's always the thing that I want people to think about when we think about, well, this is what my dad taught me. But I'm absolutely honored, absolutely humbled that you guys invited me on. I greatly appreciate it. And I look forward to any further conversations that we might have, and hopefully we'll be able to connect in November down there in Austin. So,
baby, I'm here.
Let's do it. Maybe dresses again. Who knows?
I don't know, man.
Yeah, but and for the listeners though, I appreciate you listening in. These two phenomenal message. Phenomenal men, lead from the heart always. And if you want to come check me out, I'm not as near as advanced as these guys here, but you can come check me out at Mind Muscle Strength. That's my YouTube channel. Just getting off the ground, so bear with me. Some good information, but not as high tech. So anyway, I appreciate it.
Love y'all. Take care of yourself.
We'll see you, brother.
Namaste.